Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. We're here at Lemons Edge Machine Works. We got the transmission out of the work truck. It's it's a 1999 Dodge cabin chassis with a diesel and a New Venture 4500 5-speed. Best truck you can buy. Let me show you what failed on it. It's a really interesting one. The input shaft got a little bit ate up, and it got to where you'd pull up to a stop light and you'd be in first gear and it wouldn't want to come out of gear and it's trying to shove you through the light. And I thought it was like not releasing the clutch all the way. So I put a slave cylinder in it. What it was actually a failed pilot bearing. I don't know if you can see it or not. Hopefully it comes through. But there are all kinds of ground up little chunks of the roller bearings in that pilot bearing. And it was grabbing that input shaft and not letting the clutch release. Well, the clutch was released, but the input shaft was frozen to the engine still. And it's a first for me. The clutch actually looks to be in great shape. So we'll tear it down. We're gonna have to look at, it's got 300,000 miles on it now, so we're gonna look at bearings and synchros at least and putting an input shaft in it. And we'll go ahead and do this real quick. We'll just take the bell housing off first. Ooh, what was that, Artemis? Raining here in Oklahoma today. This bell housing doesn't do anything. It's dry. There's no oil seal or anything there. Really, you could probably do all the work with it on there. We're just getting it out of the way so we can see everything a little better. Did I tell you I did my bike tires the other day by myself?
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
You bought all the equipment?
Yeah. I bought a set of spoons and a little balancer. This is just easier to do when it's got a little mass behind it. You could do that at any time, but you may as well get it off. You also don't need a 4-foot long extension to do this. It's just what I have right here handy. This is the extension I use to go around the edge of the bell housing and get all the bolts on transmissions I pull. Okay. Go. Huh. Interesting. So this is actually a weird transmission. This is 5th gear in the back. A little different. Most of the time you don't have just one gear set hanging off the end. And somebody's been in here before. I didn't realize anybody had ever been in here. I don't think it was me. But the nut's been banged on. So anytime you're working on a gearbox, if you want to get the shafts out of it and you want to make everything real easy, I think it's just important to realize that you just take your retainers off, take an input bearing out if it'll come out. I don't think this one will come out yet, but you know, slide the back off, just take everything loose, and then you should be able to pick the shafts up out of it. Looks like we need a little Allen wrench to get that nut unlocked. These transmissions had a bad habit back in the day. They liked to back this nut off and you would lose 5th gear because the main shaft gear would just fall off. And there's been a couple of different fixes and retrofits and things that people have done and developed to prevent that from happening. So it's important to pay attention if you have to work on one of these, what style of main shaft you have, and if there's an opportunity to upgrade it, probably go ahead and do it. Any transmission you're working on, if you want it to stop spinning, you can lock it in 2 gears at once. If you can get it to there. There. Lock it in a few gears at once and it will not turn. I forgot roll pin punches. That's one thing I probably should have brought. I hope I have some here. Do you have roll pin punches, Dad? No? Why not? Feels like this has Loctite packed all around it, which was pretty common, that people would just Loctite the heck out of those nuts. You can see it under the thrust washer. There. So that's how this, I think this is one of the improved main shafts if I remember right. And that gear, when it tries to thrust off, will hit this split washer. Instead of thrusting on the nuts threads, it thrusts on that in the shaft there. So it can't hit the nut because this washer's in the way. And the washer can't split because it has that ring that you put on. Kind of a weird fix, but I guess that's what they chose.
It works.
It worked.
That's this fender over here. I'm trying to do a repair.
Okay.
Are you working on your paint?
Yeah.
Put those in there. This is your input bearing retainer and seal. Bearings look decent for their age. Oh, and you can get that out. Okay, so you can get the input shaft right out if you wanted to just swap input shafts where we've got this one chewed up, because the Synchro's ring is kind of splined onto the input shaft. So that's nice. I couldn't remember if that's the way it was or not, but good to know. And I think we'll have shims under here. Yeah, they're there. That's that bearing off the input side. Alright, well it ain't coming apart yet. Let's get the back, get that fluid off. We can take this snap ring off and that will help us. When you're looking at synchronizers to tell if they've got any life left in them, look at that gap underneath them. The manuals will have you checking with feeler gauges and things. These are actually in amazingly good condition for 300,000 miles. Of course, I've been driving it for most of that time, and I try not to tear my stuff up. Shine that light down in there. Okay, so it's just there's another roll pin on that shaft. And if I remember right, it seemed like that one wants to move easier maybe. Because this in my mind is familiar. That's the roll pin I'm on right there. Okay, so that is the roll pin that moves easier. I'm not certain why these never wanted to move, but I remember that from the past now. So I ground them a punch so it'll actually go through there. You just knock it out and it'll go to the bottom. We'll fish it out later. So that lets that come off of that shaft, essentially. And our little dogs come out. That's what pops that gear into neutral and makes it want to stay there, or detents it into whatever position it's in. They look like they're in good shape. I like to sometimes, just to make assembly and disassembly work easier, you'll see that people mark these. And I don't see any marks on this one. And not that I can't figure it out later, but just to make my life really easy, I'm gonna mark it. It helps keep everything really simple and crystal clear. So get a shot of that, Brandon, so people can see what I'm talking about. Now I know this hub, that ring go together. They're both facing out because I can't have possibly ground on the back side. And that when I take it apart, that I can line them back up and they'll go right back the same way. I do a lot of that stuff. I suggest you pay attention. A lot of the times it matters and it's only going to go back together one particular way.
Use a lot of numbered or lettered punches at OPS when it took stuff, especially if you have multiple jobs you're doing at once.
Yeah, and you could use something like that, except on transmission parts they're all hardened.
That's true.
So you kind of get and that's why I say mark them, because yeah, you can figure it out like, okay, that one's tapered to the back side because it has to go in, blah blah blah, but just make your life easy. Make your life easy, don't worry about it. Alright, that and that are no longer together, but that's where they were pinned together. That'll let our fifth gear come off. We've got a thrust washer, and it looks like it's got a cutout for a pin in it, so we need to make sure we don't lose the pin. See that's what you're looking for. This kind of stuff's what makes transmissions work or not work. Don't forget the little pieces, okay? That little guy there goes up in that and keeps it from turning on the shaft. Now that lets us get our bearing retainer out and the shims. We just want to keep track of those. In an ideal world, you could replace the bearings and use the shims that the last guy set it up with, and it should come out pretty close to working, if not working. There's our back main case bearing there. How we doing, Brandon?
Pretty good.
All right. Now, that should allow main shaft to come out, if I remember right. Maybe not. If it won't come out of there still, then we'll know what to do next, which would be make room by dropping the counter shaft. I'm hoping it comes out of there. Nope. So, we still don't have enough room to get that main shaft up out of the top. So we're going to drop the counter shaft. And that doesn't make any sense. I'm thinking it should come out. That's going to make it a real pain in the butt to build later, if we have to have both shafts in there to shim either one. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. I know Brandon doesn't want to do that. Here's our thrust bearing off the back side of the input shaft. Oh, there we go. There we go. That bearing can come off. That washer can come off. And again, we've got that washer's got some damage to it. I'd almost like to replace it. Anytime you can feel a little lip like that, it shouldn't have ever thrusted that hard for so long to have worn out. But like I said, a lot of miles. But anyways, we've got the little notch here, so we've got another little pin. We've got to find it. I don't see a pinhole, and that bearing hadn't moved. I assume we had a pin, but there's no shiny inside the pin groove, so it doesn't look like it ever had a pin in it. And if the main shaft's not cut for a pin, then it probably just ain't got one. I don't see a pinhole. Do you, Brandon?
No.
There's some rust in the back that ain't good. I don't know how that got there. All right. Well, at least now, hopefully with the front taken apart, the back bearing off, we can slide the main shaft out. That'd be great news.
It amazes me that anything rusts that much with that much oil on it.
Yeah, right? And it may just be ugly grease. Now this gives us our first chance to see all the way to the bottom of the case, and I'm looking for two things. And I see both of them. So right up here on our shift top, stupid light. All right, show the shift top, Brandon. When we pulled the top off, which I should have showed that as well, but taking the top off is simple. You just take the bolts out around the perimeter and pick the top up. But it's got these plastic pads that guide the fork into the clutching hub. And one of them was missing, so I was hoping to find it in the bottom. And we already knocked that roll pin down on the bottom, so we need to get it out. So let's fish those items out. I see them. There's our missing pad that was gone when we pulled the top, and you can see it's ate up. So it's a good thing we got in here anyway.
Not as bad as I thought it would be, though.
No, not as bad as I thought. And there's the roll pin that we just knocked off in there. So we'll get it out. All right. Now what? Now what? Do we tear the main shaft down, or do we get the counter shaft out? And I say we get the counter shaft out, because it's easy. We'll set this to the side, and we'll come back to it. You can see we've got a shaft here for the, inside here is your reverse idler. That's what changes the direction of rotation when you're in reverse. So you've got an extra gear, so it spins this main shaft gear the opposite way. In reverse, every other gear is going to drive off that counter shaft, or the counter shaft is going to drive off of it in the case of this. But in reverse, the main shaft gear drives off the idler drives off of the counter shaft, and that's what reverses the direction of your vehicle's movement. So if you didn't know, now you know. But anyways, that's riding on a shaft with a bearing in it. A couple thrust washers at the back. That's gonna be caught by that bearing retainer there. We'll get this apart. Clunk. It's a good noise. And again, you've got shims. This is where your counter shaft shims from. So pay attention to those, keep them where they were. They're different sizes, so it's not like you could really get it too confused, I would hope. Now, I don't remember on this if you have to knock that bearing off from the inside, which is kind of what's coming into my memory banks, or if it'll just come on out. Oh, let's get that guy out of the way first. Now that the retainer's gone, that shaft just comes on out. And then the idler will roll down out of the way. You've got a thrust washer on the back side there, thrust washer on the front side there. They can be installed either way. They've got cutouts for both. Bearings in the middle. Nothing special about it. It could go either way, it looks like. You want to pay attention to things like that. If it can go either way and it's in decent shape, I might go ahead and flip it over when I put it back together just to give it a fresh face to push on. It might last longer. Not that I put a lot of miles on in reverse, though. I'm not a professional backer-upper.
You ain't tow mater.
You can heat just the area right below the rollers, and then it'll pop right through. You just do one there, and do one here. Do one here, and then all that'll fall off. And then what you want to do is, I need to put some pressure on it. Or here, hold the torch a sec.
Yep.
I hadn't thought about that, but it might come on out now that the rollers are off of it. Let me try that. Let me try just taking it out. Yeah, there we go. Because the rollers were really what was keeping us held up anyways. Yeah, for a sec. And I'll try to just heat the whole bearing up and get it to drop. I got it.
You can put all that oil in for.
I won't. Yeah, see it jump down?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's all you got to do to get those, get a little bit of gravity on your side. It's funny how us weirdos on the other side of the things always want to just use those constant, irrefutable forces of nature that are always going to be there.
Yep.
That require no further
We've
investment.
talked about that forever, haven't we? Gravity still works.
Gravity still works. Plug here we can tap out.
Boy, it's dark in there.
That's just an oil plug. That.
Is that just a race?
Yeah, it's just a bearing race. Case feels nice. It's snug though, that's always good. You want to look at the case to see if any of these have spun. Like this one looks like it's spun in the case. So we'll check it with a new, yeah it has. We'll check it with a new bearing though, and if we need to address that we can. Luckily.
You know where a machine shop is.
Yeah, luckily somebody along the way bought a machine shop that just happens to be sitting there doing not much. You can take all your PTO covers off. this is your ID tag, this little aluminum tag. So you might hang on to it and keep it put back where it was. Let's see what mine says. That's how you can tell it's a new Venture 4500. That says 4500. Built December 14th, 1998. Just got the new war off of it. But you know, the transmission's never acted right since I bought the truck. Put about 200,000 miles on it myself and hadn't acted right the whole time. Okay, I'm gonna put these in the outside parts box.
I just went dead over, oh, no, I see.
That's your magnet. That's your only. Cool. That's your only filter.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
That goop is dissolved bearings, dissolved gear surfaces. That's all the steel.
I'll show you. Yeah.
That's all the steel we've worn off in 300,000 miles.
That's crazy.
You know, I keep really good maintenance up. Change my tranny oil at least once every 300,000 miles or so. No, we changed it once or twice. I know, because it's got the wrong oil in it. Who's that?
I think that's Brandon's truck. Mine's getting almost that loud.
Darn rednecks in your loud pickup trucks. Golly. I don't want to beat on it any harder than that. I'll put a dent in it. If I can get the edge to break loose. And you don't have to do a whole tear down like this. Like if I'd have wanted to leave that counter shaft in there for all intents and purposes, I probably could have. But I've done this a million, bazillion times. I want to be thorough, and I want to show you guys how to be thorough. Kind of want to pop that fill plug back out too, while it's easy.
Just a hex, is that what that is? Pipe thread?
Brandon's back.
No dog this time. Bigger.
Yeah.
Are they American?
I don't know. A lot of this is not. A lot of it's metric. But sometimes they'll use American on the fill plug. It looks like they did. So that's a 3/8. Let me get a real Allen wrench on it. I think we'll get it to come loose. That's one of the reasons I like this transmission. I don't know if that comes across on the camera very well or not, but it's a compact little unit, but it is extraordinarily heavy duty made. Like the weight of that. A lot of smaller transmissions, you get them down to their case and you can just take that case and throw it around. And this thing is a unit, an absolute chunk of iron.
Chunk of steel.
So,
All right.
and it's funny when you see things like this as well. So like, yeah, it was cast for a drain plug. They just didn't bother to give you one. You got to pull your bottom BTO bolt out to drain it. But if you wanted to drill and tap one,
That's what that's for. It's cast for it, huh?
Yep. And they put these transmissions in a lot of trucks. It wasn't just your Dodges. I think they're in Chevy 1-tons of the era. There's a few different places I've seen them, even in commercial trucks. Okay, so let's tear the main shaft down. That's the next step. The fun part. Oh! we gonna do? We got parts that can come off both ends. And we've got another hub here. So I'm gonna make this my second marking. First, I wanna make sure that nobody else has previously marked it. Because if they've marked it and taken it apart and put it back together and the marks still line up, you don't need to do anything. In fact, you don't really need to do anything anyways. I just recommend that until you're really familiar with these, that you do this right here. This is our second hub that we're taking off. So it's got 2 marks.
All right.
Now when I pull that apart, I don't have to worry about where it
Get close
was,
enough to see it. Hold on.
which side was facing out, none of that'll matter because it'll be easy.
Yeah, there it is.
2 little marks that we ground right across the face.
Oop.
And you want to make sure you keep control of the dogs and the springs here. These internally controlled hubs like this have a tendency to want to snap apart. And the 6-speed version of the same era, these are much more difficult to work with. They have little balls inside as well. There's springs and balls and detented parts. Okay, so we know that's the outside.
You want another tray to put stuff in?
Nah, we'll make a pile of it, it'll be all right. Another synchro ring.
So those things were just holding it in, huh? The springs were keeping it from coming out.
The springs just make, basically all the spring is doing, this sits,
Holding that wedge in or whatever
Yeah.
it is, yeah.
well, no, not really. This sits right there, and the spring presses out. And this
into
has detents cut in it in only certain locations. That's why I say mark them, because this has to go back right here where it was
Yeah.
for it to do its job.
Okay.
And then this,
Now, is there a top and a bottom to them?
yeah, when it's in gear, it'll be in either that position or that position. But when it's in neutral, it's in that position.
Okay.
And the spring just helps to hold this where it needs to be.
Cool.
Not all transmissions have them. These are supposed to be a little smoother shifting and better about staying in gear. There's our next gear. Now, one thing that I always see people wondering about on these transmissions are these orange rings. See the orange ring, Dad? Those orange rings are always going to go up against snap rings, and that's the only thing you got to know. You got a bearing here, you got no snap ring here, you got no orange thing here. Guess what I'm going to find right underneath the orange thing? It's a snap ring! Oh no, what do we do? We can't keep track of all of these things. But you can, because it's real easy. You ain't gotta worry. Just remember that. Goes up against snap ring, keeps your bearing from turning against your snap ring. I've never seen them in another transmission before in my life. That's a unique item to these new ventures in my world. Come off of there. I usually have these stood up in a vise. Makes working on them easier. Where you just make the whole thing vertical.
Well, we can move over to mine. You ought to have one mounted on your truck.
I did.
I thought you probably did.
At one point I had one. There we go. Got that off. And then anytime you pull the thrust washer off, you need to make sure you look underneath it and see if it's got one of those pins to keep it from rotating on the shaft. And this one does. I can feel it. You see the thing? And there's our pin. You just got to remember that we're going to have one location where we have a snap ring or where we have a thrust washer. We won't have a pin, and that was on that behind that nut on the other end of the main shaft. But I'll remember that. One trick about thrust washers, you want to know if the thrust washer's in good shape or not? Look and see where it's doing its job. Like, it doesn't matter if I can see that it's got wear. I can't feel it. If you were to just lightly abrade that a little bit, it would be an even surface. You just want it to be smooth and flat and not cracked. And you will not be able to see the cracks. So you have to listen. If it rings like a bell,
That's amazing.
It can't have a crack in it.
That's a cool trick. I've definitely never done this kind of stuff. I don't think that 56 Dodge had this many parts.
Probably not. And this is this is the end of our shaft. This is fixed. If I remember, we have a series of little snap rings here because we're going to hold on a cone on the inside. Yep. So I want, this one's fibrous. I do want to put that one back, I think, and we'll mark together all of that. But yeah, these fibrous synchros aren't as robust.
No.
They're not carved metal. They're glue and asbestos or something. And with a few pieces here, what we'll do is similarly, we'll do 3 dots. Make sure it's not previously marked. We'll go. We got 1, 2, 3. One, two, three. One, two, three. Now all of those parts are marked together. There can be no confusion later. I could take them off together, but I'm going to try to separate them. Sometimes they won't want to shift, and you have to push on those little guys, the little dogs inside there. Like that collar doesn't want to come off. So
It just pops off now.
I'll make it. But watch those, because like,
They come flying out.
yes, they absolutely come
But they're important to find.
flying out.
Or do they come with a kit?
You can buy them, but they can be hard to locate. That jumped out. There it is.
Hey, Mike.
Okay, got our next ring off. Got all our parts. We got a spring.
Yeah, that'll work. Come on out if you're ready. And Roger's still here if you can stick around a minute.
Okay, we got 4 dogs, 4 springs.
Okay. All right, bye.
Is that Mikey?
Yeah,
Is Mikey gonna come out?
he's gonna come out to bring me the trooper, but yeah.
Heck
I
yeah.
tried to say stick around too.
Okay, we got our next piece
Somebody
off.
keep track of all the parts. This is more than I would have thought.
Yeah. And we won't have to worry, as long as we remember we come off from this side, we'll know, okay, the marks were on that side. And you could go ahead and mark that, and I'm not going to. I know where we're gonna be when we get all done. I'm not worried.
I think you've done enough to be that confident, you know?
Yeah, I could do after you do about, I rebuilt these transmissions for like 5 years, not these in particular, but any transmission, mainly for semi trucks and things. And they're all twin countershafted, triple countershaft on your max. And it gets to be a point that it doesn't matter what transmission it is or what it came out of or anything. We'd have 10 or 15 of them tore down in piles at any given time, waiting on approval for repairs or waiting on parts. And you just had to go grab the pile and put it back together, and it had to work.
Yeah, now I know why. The quote for mine getting done so expensive.
Yeah. And yours is automatic, isn't it?
Yeah, in the truck.
Yeah. I think they're more complex, but I may be wrong.
Well, automatics are great. And generally cheaper to work on too.
That was something I was worried about when we bought the Escape being a manual. I was like, man, I hope it doesn't have transmission issues.
Same thing we've been doing, marked our hub. This is a different one because the hub comes off, but it's inconsequential to what you're doing as a rebuild. They are stuck in there, and we'll pull them out. There, 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 there. There, springs and dogs. There, out of the way. That doesn't come apart any farther. And here's our other orange monstrosity. Guess what it's doing?
I bet there's a snap ring behind it.
You think there's a snap ring on the other side of it? You think it's just keeping that bearing from riding on the snap ring? There's a snap ring right there.
Can you get it in there again and just tap the whole snap ring towards you?
Well, if I
Or your pliers?
I want to, but it won't. Let me get a screwdriver and get down there and force it that way with a screwdriver. I'm replacing that synchro anyways, but it's just gonna get that off. Oh no, okay, so we're in a better shape. I thought that was something else. Yeah, I thought you were.
I had to come back a little bit. Okay.
I'll probably get it now. No, it jumped back in.
That's what I was wondering if it was going to. Well, not too far, but.
No, I mean, and that snap ring is plumb jacked up now.
Yeah. Gosh. That one won't come.
I can't believe I used to fight these every day too.
There, you're loose now.
There you go.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in for this transmission teardown video on this NV4500. I hope you guys learned a lot about transmissions and how they function a little bit and how to take one apart. They're all similar and they all have their unique differences. This is just one of them. Yeah. Our bearing failure here is what caused it to need to come apart. And there wasn't really a whole lot wrong with it. We'll end up replacing those pads, tapered roller bearings, synchro rings. Make another video of putting it back together and I'll try to have a parts list of what we used to do it. Tune back in, but thanks. If you haven't done so already, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff really does help to grow the channel. And we really appreciate it. We'll keep you tuned in and updated on what we got going. Thanks.